What's up, everyone? We're back for another episode of Locked on Bucks. Milwaukee have played 2 preseason games over the weekend since the last time we got to chat. But tonight, we're going to be talking about the Bucks' big win, their first big preseason win over the Oklahoma City Thunder, mostly because Giannis played. The starters played, but Giannis played. He looked, let's say, pretty damn good. I've got some questions for Frank about Giannis, so let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can hear me and see me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my words over at ESPN and NBA Australia. And joining me, as he does post-game, the longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden. And Frank, this is a cool one. Because, look, we've had fun over the offseason. We've had fun over the preseason, looking back, enjoying this Bucks team, talking about how good we think they can be and how good they will be, the fact they're defending champions. But now we get to sit back and actually talk about a basketball game that we watched tonight that Giannis played in, and Giannis looked like Giannis.
Yeah, this was officially game 3 of the preseason for the Bucks, but it felt like game 1 from the in the true sense of the what the Milwaukee Bucks are going to be this year. And obviously, you never try to take too much away from any preseason game. First and foremost, you try to check the box on health, and did your key guys play? Did they get through it unscathed? And that's a big check mark for the Bucks here, as we see Giannis, Khris, and Jrue all back together. We see Grayson Allen as expected as the 5th starter alongside Brook Lopez. And I thought we had some interesting highlights there with Grayson Allen again, showing out and showing what he can do with Giannis on the court. But yeah, I thought, just the way this game started, and again, it's Oklahoma City, even a full strength Oklahoma City team is obviously a rebuilding team. They've got some interesting players, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, of course, Lou Dort. Both of them look pretty good tonight. And we saw a fair bit of your boy, Josh Giddey, Australia's own. But for the most part, obviously, this is a team that, you would expect the Bucks to handle pretty easily if this was a regular season game. But, we saw on Friday, the Bucks rolled out the C team or whatever in Brooklyn against a Nets team that was playing more or less all their guys other than Kyrie Irving, which is a whole other discussion. And that group, that backup group, actually did a really nice job hanging in until the very end against a much stronger Nets team. And so you can't really take anything for granted. And I thought just the way the Bucks came out tonight, they go up 9-0 lead, and who's doing the damage? Giannis Antetokounmpo and Khris Middleton just, going to work and basically saying, all right, we're not going to play a lot, but the minutes we're going to get, we're going to pretty much play our brand of basketball. And I thought, the ball was fizzing around. I thought the ball movement was great. Obviously, the shooting was really good all night for the Bucks, as they hit, what was it, 20 out of 37 from 3 or something like that. They shot the lights out, especially in that first quarter. 48 points in the first quarter, 81 in the first half. There are going to be nights, obviously, where you're not going to shoot that well, but preseason, a lot of times you're working the rust off, especially with a lot of these guys playing for the first time, and they did not look too rusty. It didn't look like too much rust had built up over the short off season.
So the final score, as you sort of pointed to, it's kind of inconsequential, and most of the starters didn't play in the second half. Anyway, the final was 130-110. You already mentioned the 48 points they had in the first quarter, which is that's one way to blow the rust off. Just drop 48 in the first quarter. I want to get to Giannis. Before we do, I say this all the time, but we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of every single day. You can get it free on wherever you listen to your podcast, and now on YouTube as well. If you weren't already aware, I mentioned it about 12 times per podcast. So if you didn't know we're on YouTube, I'm sure you do now. I thought one of the big things, and you spoke about the way the ball was fizzing around, and we should note this. I mean, just watching this Oklahoma City team, they weren't actually really missing anyone. I mean, they had a couple of role players out. I mean, Derek Favors, whatever. I mean, that's not going to change a lot. And it just looked like men against boys. I mean, there was that one possession early in the game where my guy, Josh Giddey, Giannis just sort of looked at him and said, I'm just going to run through you. And Giddey made the right decision, moved out of the way, and it was a layup. And it was kind of like that with the starters out there. They were just physically overwhelming them. Brook Lopez, I can't remember who the Oklahoma City player was that was playing center at the time, but Lopez just bulldozed him, sort of elbowed him in the head, and then just dropped in a hook. It was just physical abuse out there on the floor. But in the post game, and I jumped in the Zoom calls, there was a lot of talk to Jrue Holiday and Giannis about the chemistry and the fact that they looked pretty good out there. And this is maybe one aspect that we haven't looked at a lot. This was their first time playing together in a preseason game. Sure, the opposition wasn't of the highest standard, but unlike last year, these guys do at least have one season under their belt. And it's kind of funny to think that they probably still have room for improvement. We spoke about that in the chat with Eric Name the other day. It's only year 2 with these guys, but they do have an inbuilt chemistry that they got from last season that wasn't there at the start of last year. And it was just pretty remarkable to see how well it fit. Bud really, with the rotations, kept the 4 starters together at all times. Poor old Brook Lopez just keeps on getting left out. He was the odd man out that had to stay out there on the floor. But Bud kept the 4 guys together for a section at the start. And then at the end of the first quarter and the end of the second quarter, he went small with Giannis at the 5. So he's clearly got the intention of getting these guys. If they're going to play in the preseason, he's going to maximize their minutes playing together.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that we saw the Giannis small lineup with Pat Connaughton slotting in as essentially the 4-man in Brook's stead, and then we saw another variant of it with Jordan Nwora playing as well. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a different look playing, Connaughton or a guy like Nwora. They're obviously different players, but playing either of those guys instead of PJ Tucker is obviously different because PJ, I think, again, lets you play big while playing small, if that makes sense. Even though he can defend perimeter guys, he can obviously brings like a strength and a toughness factor that, as much as Pat Connaughton and Jordan Nwora might bring, they're just not going to bring that same thing. So I think what's going to be interesting to see and Dudley, my puppy, has some thoughts. I think he's got some Grayson Allen takes that he wants to get in here, which we're going to need to get to. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing to see. Interesting to see Giannis getting some opportunities to switch on to perimeter guys here in his first game back, which of course we obviously all talked about having that as an option and a look that you can go to, and obviously it was one that was useful at various points throughout the playoffs last year, including the finals. Just again having Giannis be that Swiss Army knife defensively. I thought he did look more aggressive defensively as well, by the way. We talked about that in his light of his media day comments. He was talking about chasing everything. Again, we'll see what he's like in the regular season. But he definitely went for some stuff in this game as well. Was kind of all over the court. Did not look like he was kind of holding back or trying to, pick his spots, which again, maybe partly because he only played 17 minutes. But yeah, I thought, again, just the chemistry is obviously, I think, going to be better this year than it was, especially early last year, given that you've had that full year with Jrue under your belt. Jrue a couple times got loose kind of along the baseline and was, sort of one of the guys sort of late in a possession. It was Jrue Holiday popping up, under the basket on a cut for an open look. And, again, that's obviously we've talked a lot about the dunker spot and, having guys, including smalls, just be cutting, be flexible, looking for that type of move to the basket. And Jrue kind of paid off a couple of those tonight. So yeah, I mean, I guess, I hesitate to call it the fully operational Death Star at this point, given it's just, game 1 of the preseason against Oklahoma City. But, again, you just want to keep these guys healthy, find some modicum of rhythm here in the preseason. And considering we were thinking that Giannis, is he going to play at all in the preseason? The fact that he's here in game 3, I'm guessing he may not play in both of the remaining preseason games, but look back at his last few years. I think the last 4 years he's played like 2, 3, 2, and 3 preseason games. So pretty similar to what we're used to seeing from Giannis in terms of, missing some time early in the preseason, then kind of getting into some form here as the exhibition season wears on. And obviously, when you make a bunch of shots, everybody looks better. But it was pretty fun to watch Giannis in particular tonight because I think he scored 8 points in 3 minutes, and then kind of decided, all right, I'm not going to, necessarily throw my body around quite as much. Took a couple jump shots. Didn't actually make another field goal. We should probably talk about his free throw routine a little bit. He went to I was curious what he was going to do because in the finals he went to basically the pantomime, free throw attempt before he gets the ball, and then he stopped taking his really deep breath when he caught the ball and just went straight into his 6, sometimes 7 dribbles and then shot up. And this was different because he actually caught the ball. I didn't notice him take he only shot 2 free throws. I didn't notice him do the practice free throw before he caught the ball, which is a way actually get around the 10-second count because it doesn't count. He just caught it, took 1 deep breath, and then just took 1 dribble and then shot it, which again, who knows? We'll see. He missed his only 2 free throws tonight. We'll see if that motion changes at all. But I had to get in some Giannis free throw talk here. It wouldn't be Locked On Bucks without it. So, but yeah, I mean, hard to complain. They got through it healthy. Those guys looked like they could do what they wanted when they wanted. Khris Middleton was hitting jump shots. Jrue was all over the place. Again, check the box type of first game of the preseason for those dudes.
Yeah, when they called the first time out, I think it was around the 7:03 mark. The Bucks already had 22 points or something silly like that on the board, and I thought, Giannis does look like he's pretty good. And then I had to remind myself, like, what the hell are you talking about, Kane? The guy nearly snapped his leg in half and then scored 50 points like 2 weeks later. I'm pretty sure that, even if he's sore, even if he's injured, he's proven that, yeah, he can play to a pretty high level. I've got a theory about Giannis's free throw shooting, and I think I know how we can fix it moving forward. I know you're going to like
Built Bar? Is this a Built Bar? Is this a Built Bar read or something?
He just needs to eat more Built. No, it's not. But it is. We are, we talk about the ways that he can improve. I noticed something tonight that I thought maybe I haven't spent enough time on that. Maybe I've been sleeping on that. But speaking of Sleeper, in 2018, the fantasy sports experts at Sleeper realized that fantasy basketball was broken. Games were being won and lost based on who had more scheduled games that week. It made no sense and required very little strategy. So in 2020, Sleeper released a brand new way of playing fantasy basketball. It's called Game Pick, and it's only available on Sleeper. In Game Pick, owners pick a single game per week for each starter to count towards their team's total score, ensuring an even number of games played between opponents. So basically, you're not going to lose out. You don't have to look at the waiver wire and think to yourself, well, this guy's got 4 games this week. This guy's only got 3. I better pick that player, even if he's perhaps not as good as the other. So it just makes things simple. And if you're, you don't have the commitment like I don't with fantasy basketball, it's going to suit you this game. So all you have to do is download the Sleeper app and start a league with your friends today. You will not be disappointed. Now, I've seen a lot of people talking about different streaming services, and I don't know exactly what the situation is with the local TV over there in Milwaukee. I know the blackouts are just a giant pain in the ass, but this, DirecTV stream could help. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friends log in for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way that you can get all the entertainment you love without the hassle. It's called DirecTV Stream. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device applies. Content varies by package.
Right, Kane, can you guess what service I used to watch the Bucks game tonight?
It wasn't DirecTV Stream, was it?
It was.
Well, I looked up. So, but did you watch ESPN then?
Yeah. I mean, and it is not because I'm getting a deal because they're a sponsor. It was previously called AT&T TV. I cut the cord. I went from DirecTV satellite to a streaming, basically AT&T TV, and then that was rebranded DirecTV Stream. So yeah, it's just internet only, but I've got it through a set-top box on my TV, and then but I think what's really important for me is like if I watch it through the ESPN app, like a game. Like I was trying to use that first, and I couldn't pause or rewind it on my Roku. So I was just like, well, I was recording it on the DirecTV Stream app, right? It's like a DVR, it's like a normal like any other sort of cable type thing in terms of the DVR functionality. So I did then switch over and just watch the rest of it on the DTV Stream because I was trying to catch up, and obviously, especially like for us, people like us who like obsess over these games,
Right.
like you want to rewatch stuff
Yeah.
and make sure you don't miss any parts of it. And so, yeah, having a DVR'd version of it is really important. And that's one of the things I find annoying about a lot of the streams. Like I was watching the U.S. Panama soccer game, which was a disaster this afternoon. But like Paramount Plus, like you can't pause it while you're watching it. It's just like, hey, if you're watching it, you got to watch it while it's happening, and then I think you can watch replays. But anyway, so that's my very organic TTV stream endorsement. So there you go, Kane.
It's probably better than what my actual ad read was anyway. And I did look it up. Bally Sports Wisconsin, the channel is actually 6'9", so that's nice as well. So keep that in mind. Easy to remember. My theory
By the way, I think all the channel numbers are the same across regular DirecTV and DirecTV stream. So if you're on regular DirecTV, you don't need, and no matter where in the country you are, it all carries over. Because I used to go up to my parents' house, they had DirecTV, and it was like 669, blah blah. So yeah, good number, I guess, for
good
a
number.
channel.
Yes, no doubt about that. So my theory with Giannis free throws, and I was watching this game tonight, and he did go 0 for 2, and I had a few people tweet at me and say, "Did you notice this?" And I said, "Well, for me, if I was Giannis, I'd probably, and look, I know they're going to have new coaches, they're going to try different things, and they're not going to base it off one game, but I would have felt pretty comfortable sticking with what got you 17 for 19 in Game 6 of the NBA Finals. But I think another thing that he could potentially do is, and maybe Bucks fans just need to start doing a fast 10 count, and Giannis shoots the free throw on the 12th, because let's be honest. First, it would take away his anxiety about the people doing it on the road. And secondly, I really think that he got a rhythm. I really do. It was clockwork. Every time on the 12, he would shoot the free throw. I don't think it was hurting him in the end. So, he's a rhythm guy. That would be perfect. Then the exact same thing is happening every single time. So maybe keep it in mind, Bucks fans.
Wait, you saying on the 12 or on the 10?
Well, because the fans count fast. So he was actually shooting it on the 12. It was probably 9.5. I don't know.
By the way, if you were an opposing fan, wouldn't you think it'd be more helpful to count down than count up?
Well, Jeff,
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and then like do one of those. Like people, I mean, that was like a thing with a lot of the like squad 6, and they would do that with like the false counts on shot clocks, right? Which, I mean, definitely there were at least a handful of times where it looked like that actually threw an opposing team off. I think it over the years became less effective, but yeah.
Well, I think Jeff Van Gundy came up with the idea, and this is a very Jeff Van Gundy.
Oh God, should I feel bad about that then, Jeff Van Gundy also?
No. Well, he was saying that they should actually be going like 1, 7, 3, 4, which if everyone in the crowd just yells at the random number, yeah, it would probably be pretty confusing. Yeah, it would be hard to find that rhythm. So anyway, we're not trying to put Giannis off here, but we spoke last week about potential ways that he could get better, and we always talk about the different shots that he can do, different moves he can have on offense. And I was watching him, and you were talking about some of the passes he made. I mean, he was legitimately assist hunting. A lot of them were going to Grayson Allen. He found him with passes in the corner, and it was funny listening to Grayson Allen in the post-game interview with Zora. He was just like, yeah, I'm learning pretty quickly to just have your hands up whenever Giannis has got the ball, because if not, he's going to whip the ball straight into your face. And I think it's true. And we spoke the other day about how Giannis sometimes is improved and found different ways to be involved playing off the ball. But I was watching his passing tonight, and he was trying some stuff. And sure, when you win it by 30, you can do that. But I do wonder if sometimes we just overlook the fact, what if he just becomes better with the ball in hand and a better passer and a better distributor as well? I mean, there's legitimate room for growth there, and you can sort of transfer that into talking about Grayson Allen if you want, because I know that he did benefit from a bit of this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the pass that stuck out the most was that transition pass where he kind of used his go-go gadget arms and took his left arm and basically did like a wrap around a defender for a bounce pass to Khris Middleton for a dunk. That was maybe my favorite pass, but yeah, with Grayson Allen, there were definitely, he was going like full, like it was like he had just watched a 1980s Showtime Lakers highlight video, and he was like, driving and just whipping the ball around without really looking. And so it was fun to watch. I mean, and again, we like, it's not like this is like a brand new thing, right? Like it's like Giannis's comment. I think it was to Eric in one of his Athletic articles. What was it? Was it in the Athletic article that Eric wrote, or maybe it was just something? I think it might have been where he was just like, MFers didn't know I could pass or something like that. And yeah, I mean, he's been making cool passes for ever, really. I mean, I think he's definitely gotten better, more comfortable over the years. And I think in the finals in particular, finals and Hawk series, I thought his control, you look at his turnover numbers relative to his assist numbers, cutting way down on his turnovers in the finals in particular, and still, making good reads and obviously balancing, finding teammates with just being a monster, unstoppable scoring force. That was obviously, just next level stuff from him. And I thought tonight, it was kind of like, all right, kind of taking a test drive out with Grayson Allen, the new toy, see what the new toy can do a little bit. And I thought, Allen kind of did exactly kind of what you kind of wanted him to do. And again, we saw him, I guess it was game 1 of the preseason, that, he did some similar stuff, kind of showing that, he can do a little 2-man game. He did find Giannis on a little 2-man game. Giannis missed the initial shot, and then he scored on the putback. So no assist for Allen on that play. But you're Grayson Allen. You got to know, where your bread is buttered. So trying to find Giannis early, and then obviously getting loose, rhythm 3-point shooter as a catch and shoot guy. That's obviously going to be really important because I really think he is kind of. I said this in our chat with you and Eric and company, but there is sort of like he is kind of like a hybrid of Bryn Forbes and Dante DiVincenzo in that I think he's, I don't know that he's quite the shooter Bryn Forbes was last year, for instance. I don't know that Bryn Forbes is the shooter he was last year, given how Bryn shot it during the regular season. But he's, I'd say, certainly a more proven, reliable 3-point shooter than Dante is, which isn't to take away, the strides Dante has made, but better 3-point shooter than Dante, maybe not quite Forbes as a 3-point shooter, but then he also has, more of Dante's kind of playmaking ability. And I thought, the one thing that he did tonight, he had a couple of really nice finishes at the basket. And, the one, I think it was a 2-man game with Brook Lopez where, he's driving down the right side, Brook's filling the middle, and he just rose up and crammed it and just dunked it in a half court, one-handed. I think as I was watching that, I was just sort of thinking like that's where, Dante, for all his athleticism, just doesn't really have like the length and like big enough hands to just, kind of dunk like that. And again, not that, Grayson Allen is Dr. J or something like that, but he makes makes plays like that. And then we saw him again drive along the baseline for a nice reverse layup. So certainly the numbers bear out that he's been a more consistent finisher than Dante, not a guy who's gotten to the rim as much as Dante, which you have to give Dante some credit. He gets the rim, not always a consistent finisher when he gets there, but those are high percentage shots that you want or higher percentage shots that you want to create. But yeah, I thought it was just, an impressive performance from him. And, I think defensively, that's the area where certainly you would give Dante the edge, but man, he also had a play tonight where he kind of came from behind and jumps up and blocks with his left hand a little runner, which I was like, on live time, I thought it was going to be ruled a goaltend. And then I rewatched the replay. And I was like, I think that was a legit block. But I mean, it was, that was not a block that a 6'4" dude typically makes, as a help side guy coming up behind the man defender and just wiping one out and sending it into the first row. That was certainly maybe not a play we're going to see all the time from Grayson Allen, but I think we've seen Dante and to an extent Pat as well. The fact that those guys can use their athleticism on the boards, they can use their athleticism to be defensive playmakers. Again, not that they're perfect defenders, but again, if Grayson Allen can fit into that mold and defend just consistently, and then also pop up and make some big plays, rebound his position well, obviously that's exactly what you need, especially with Bryn Forbes gone. We know the holes he had in his game. I think he's certainly a much more well-rounded player than Bryn Forbes, but he's obviously got a great opportunity now to step into Dante's starting spot, which seems to now have been confirmed as we expected, really probably from the day he was traded. We thought he was probably the likely early season starter, and certainly starting with the group today certainly was seemed to be a clear indication of what Bud's plan is with him. And certainly he hasn't done anything in preseason to do anything but make you feel pretty good about what he's going to bring to that group.
I thought that was a goaltend for sure. As I watched it, it felt like the ball was in the air forever, and then he just jumped up and swatted it. Like he almost could have just grabbed it out of the air if he wanted to.
If
But
it was Giannis, I feel like it would have been a goal. I feel like Giannis,
yeah,
that's like, I was almost amazed in game 6 that he didn't get called for a goaltend. Not because any of those were goaltends, but because it just seems like refs want to call goaltends on Giannis, which just annoys me to no end. But anyway, sorry, King.
no, and by the way, I would say you mentioned some of the plays Giannis was making, and it's preseason. We've seen this story before. There's nothing new about it, but it's almost like when he knows he's only playing 15 minutes, he needs to play doubly as hard, and you're just like, Jesus, man, like don't hurt yourself. It's the first game of the preseason. I know this is why we love you, but let's just not get hurt here. We know you've had a bit of a sore knee, but Grayson Allen threw down that dunk. I heard a rumor that the reason he had all that power, that strength, was because he did have a Built Bar pre-game, the best tasting protein bar that's ever been made. If you didn't know this, Frank, there are many delicious flavors you can choose from. When you talk to a Built Bar fan, they're definitely passionate about their favorite choices. There's coconut, raspberry, mid brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, orange, cookies and cream, whatever you're into, you'll be able to find a flavor for you. They're healthy for you as well. 17 to 18 grams of protein, only 130 to 180 calories, 4 to 5 grams of sugar, 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. So just go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED, and you'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED for 15% off at built.com. So the reason I think we all predicted that we thought Grayson Allen would slot in, and I like that comparison. I never really thought about it like that, but because we've compared him to Dante before, but when you put him in the little triangle with Bryn Forbes, I like it because, like you said, I mean, I think the reason why you would feel better about having Grayson Allen in the starting lineup compared to a Bryn Forbes, for instance, is because he is a better defender. He is more athletic. And not only that dunk, he finished that crazy reverse layup as well, which was just like, oh my God, this guy's shown us a bit in a couple of preseason games. And the other reason is, and this was something I brought up last week when I thought that Bud would start Pat off the bench or bring Pat off the bench when they had that really random lineup, is because he does like putting him in those small ball lineups. And you mentioned this at the start of the show. I asked Bud after the game, I said, we saw the small ball lineups end of the first quarter, end of the fourth quarter. Is this something you're going to want to try and utilize more this season? And then on top of that, this is something that I've mentioned that maybe he would consider. Is there more wear and tear on Giannis when he's playing at the 5? Is that something you have in your mind? And he straight up said, no, we'll just manage Giannis's minutes in total. We're not too worried about that specifically with him playing at center. But then he did basically confirm that, yeah, they're interested in trying it a little bit more. Now, Bucks, I tweeted the quote and Bucks Twitter was absolutely loving it. And it's funny because, like, let's not forget, the guy that they've got playing at the 5 under normal circumstances, Brook Lopez, was pretty damn critical to some of the things they did as well. But it's an awesome second best lineup or stretch lineup or versatile lineup. It's really, really cool. And Bud did point to Pat as kind of the key to that, because he can play 2, he can play 3, you can even slide him to the 4, he can sort of switch between positions there, and he likes having the versatility. But it was an interesting comment, at least.
Yeah, and I mean, the obvious guy we did not see tonight was Bobby Portis, right? And he's obviously the third leg of the kind of Bucks big man barstool. Where am I going with that metaphor? I don't know, but that's I'd say that's the real test, is when Bobby's back. Then what do the rotations look like when Bobby's out? And I mean, that's the reality though too. Is if either Brook or Bobby is out, then Giannis has to play a fair amount of center, because otherwise, what are your options, right? Sandro's played a fair bit, obviously, in these first 3 games. How much he plays once you're closer to a full complement of players, and once you hit the regular season, obviously, you're not looking at him as the guy that you expect to see night to night necessarily. And he's the only other guy who's like really like of kind of like nominal center size. And then the other guys, obviously, that we've talked about, Shemi, Thanasis, like guys who are more like undersized 4s. So yeah, I mean, I think the obvious thing that is that we will see Giannis at center, a fair bit. But I think, is it going to be dramatically more than it was in previous years? I think it would have to be an injury situation for Giannis to play like tons of center, or for, them to play a lot of small ball with him at the 5. And, no other true big men on the floor as we saw tonight in those couple stretches. So, I mean, hopefully you don't need to do that because you're trying to get Bobby Portis 24 minutes a game and you're trying to get Brook, 24 to 27 minutes, whatever Brook is going to play. Um, but yeah, I mean, we'll see kind of what they do and how much they mix it up. And I think obviously there's the one thing you hope is that you have the option to do that, try it out during the regular season, and hopefully you're doing it because you want to and not because you have to because you don't have enough dudes to fill those spots.
Yeah, or the other point of that would, and we've seen this previously, where you're just losing, and it's like, okay, well, let's try Giannis at the 5. Maybe it's a little bit more proactive than reactive, as perhaps it's been over the last few years. Not so much last year, but certainly in years before that. Almost like the switching defense that only comes out when you're down 15 points to the Charlotte Hornets. But anyway, before we wrap this up, I'll remind everyone about my good Aussie mate Josh Lloyd. He's the host of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, the number one fantasy basketball podcast in the world. So if you're playing fantasy and you're not listening to that show, of course, after you listen to Locked On Bucks, well, you're making a bit of a mistake there. For tomorrow's show, I do want to talk more about Jordan Nwora. Jrue Holiday was pretty strong in his comments about Jordan Nwora after the game. As Frank mentioned in the show, they did run him with that small ball lineup to end the second half. So look, who knows? I mean, I think the one thing that we learned tonight, all of a sudden, when you have all those guys back in the lineup and you keep in mind that there was no George Hill, there was no Dante DiVincenzo, you do understand that it's going to be tough to get minutes. As much as he's impressed, as much as he's played well, this team's just really damn good and looking pretty damn deep if they're all healthy. So we'll see how that plays out. Frank, did you have any parting thoughts before we wrap it up?
I mean, I think you guys can jump into more Jordan tomorrow. Obviously, the big night on Friday with 30 points. Outdueling Kevin Durant, quote unquote, outdueling Kevin Durant in Brooklyn. And another solid night tonight. Maybe not the scoring efficiency as much tonight, but I think yeah, there you go. I thought the play that I liked the most from him, and we've alluded to it, and his teammates, coaches have alluded to it, is how does he kind of bring more balance to his game, both offensively and defensively. Yeah, I think it was a pick and roll on the right side where he whipped the ball across court to Pat Connaughton in the weak side corner for a 3. It did go in, great. So I think he had 3 assists tonight, I think. So I thought that was a play that again you can't take one play and extrapolate like, oh, now Jordan Nwora is going to be a rotation guy this year. But that's the kind of play I think that you like to see from him. Just we know he can step back and hit threes. We know he can shoot those like random one-handed floaters from 13 feet remarkably well. All that's really good. That's helpful. The fact that you can put him in a pick and roll, especially if you're looking at second units and you're trying to change up your offense a little bit, that's very useful. But the fact that he is showing hopefully a bit more willingness and ability to create plays for others, that's obviously also very, very encouraging to see, is because as we talked about, right? I mean, it's not just about him being able to cook with a bunch of second and third string dudes. We know he can do that. I think take nothing away from him. It's all you can do is play the minutes you have, and I think he's taken advantage of his time here in the preseason after pretty underwhelming summer league. I think he's bounced back from that. Has he won minutes in the regular season? I'd say no, not yet. But we still have a couple games left to go, and hopefully he'll have some more run here with the big 3 in the rest of the exhibition season. So he can at least give a little more of a preview and get a little more of a flow with those guys and kind of figure out his role there, because we know he can be really good as a garbage time guy. We know he can be really good when you're resting your main guys as a kind of emergency number one scoring option. But for him to carve out a real role long term, I think we've talked a lot about what he needs to do, and hopefully he's making some progress there. I think he is.
Yeah, no question. I think the messaging has been really clear from the Bucks as well. Like, they're clearly working on this guy and telling him what he needs to improve on. Jrue Holiday was asked after the game, what has he improved on? And he straight away again said he's passing, and then started laughing. So, I mean, I'm sure it's some friendly joking, but also Jordan Nwora is probably understanding what he needs to do to try and crack this rotation. So like I said, we'll talk about Jordan Wara more tomorrow. Obviously, we should touch on Sandro's game against Brooklyn as well. I found that a really highly entertaining preseason basketball as well. It's been some fun stuff from the Bucks so far. But if you have any thoughts on Jordan Wara, you can tweet us. You can jump in the YouTube comments, wherever you can get in touch, lockedonbucks@gmail.com as well if you don't have any of those platforms, and get onto us and we'll talk about Jordan Wara tomorrow. And the Bucks have another preseason game in a couple of days against the Utah Jazz. But it was good to be back at home. It was good to have a win, a preseason win. 1-2, although I don't count the Memphis game because they didn't play 4 quarters. So 1-1 for me. Back at 500. Shout out to the Bucks. We'll be back tomorrow with Justin Garcia, who's going to jump on with me. But for myself and Frank, we'll leave it there and we'll catch you guys tomorrow.